What kind of man walks through a storm to claim a bride who isn't his and dares the whole town to stop him? That was the question hanging in the air the moment Enoch Blackthornne stepped out of the mist. Rain slammed against the old timber church. Mud swallowed Eliza May Holloway's shoes with every shaky step. Her wedding veil was soaked through, sticking to her face, hiding tears she couldn't wipe away. Laughs rolled through the crowd gathered outside, cruel and sharp. People she'd known since childhood stared with eyes full of judgment. Her father's hand dug into her arm. "You'll marry him," he hissed, pulling her down the steps, "or this family dies with you." Eliza's satin dress clung tight to her body. The sleeves pinched her arms. The bodice dug into her ribs, and every insult she'd heard growing up echoed in her head. Too soft, too full, too much woman, not enough value. She looked up at the man waiting at the altar. Willard Holloway. Slick hair, cold smile, black suit. He looked at her like a man looking at something he'd already paid for. Then her father stood behind him smirking, proud of the trade he'd arranged. The rain turned to sleet. Cold hit her spine like needles. "Move," her father growled. But just as she took another step toward the wedding she didn't choose, the church doors groaned behind her. The sound rolled through the storm. Boots hit the wet stone slow and steady. Heads turned. A man stepped out of the fog like he'd been carved from the mountain itself. Broad shoulders, dark coat, jaw covered in old scruff, a weather-beaten hat dripping with rain. His eyes held something rough and quiet, something dangerous without even trying. He stopped at the edge of the crowd. Then his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "She's not marrying that man." Gasps broke through the cold air. Even the preacher froze. Eliza's father snarled. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger lifted his head. "Dr. Enoch Blackthornne." That name hit the crowd hard. People whispered. Rumors, stories. The mountain doctor who buried his wife and son, then vanished into the ridge. A man who lived with ghosts. A man the town had failed when he needed them most. Enoch pointed to Eliza with steady eyes. "I'm her husband." Shouts erupted. Her father barked, "You damn well ain't." Enoch didn't flinch. "I paid the preacher yesterday," he said calmly. "Got the papers." She signed them. Eliza's heart dropped. Her breath caught. She had signed something, but she didn't know this was what it meant. Enoch's voice softened, low and careful. "Say the word, Eliza. I'll take you away from here. You don't owe them a thing." Her father yanked her wrist, hard. "You don't get to choose, girl. You gave that up when you shamed this family." Shame, the word that had been thrown at her since childhood. Then she did something she never thought she would do. She took one step toward Enoch. Her father's grip tightened. "Don't you dare." But Enoch moved before she could even flinch. He grabbed her father's arm, not to hurt, just to stop, and peeled his hand off her wrist like bark off rotten wood. "She's mine now," he said. "And she'll never belong to a man who thinks he can buy her soul." Quote. He dropped a rolled parchment into the preacher's hands. Marriage license. Stamped. Signed. Legal. The crowd fell silent. Eliza's feet felt numb as Enoch guided her through the crowd. Not pulling, not claiming, just leading her away with his hand open behind her, letting her choose. And she chose. They rode out at dusk. The mule-drawn wagon rattled over stones slippery with cold rain. Enoch didn't speak. His hands held the reins steady while his eyes scanned the woods like a man used to danger. Eliza sat in the back, her damp dress plastered to her skin. She kept staring at Enoch's profile, hard jaw, tired eyes, a man shaped by storms inside and out. Why had he saved her? What did he want? She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. Fear clung to her ribs like a tight rope. When the cabin appeared, a small dark shape between two bent pines, she almost didn't see it. Enoch stopped the wagon and climbed down. He swung the cabin door open. Warm firelight spilled into the dusk. "Inside," he said. She hesitated, but he didn't grab her, didn't force her. He just waited. Inside, she stood near the hearth, arms wrapped tight around herself. Enoch removed his coat, hung it by the door, and faced her. "Eliza," he said quietly. I'm going to touch you everywhere." Her breath snapped in her throat. She stepped back, hard. "Please," she whispered, "don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't." Enoch blinked, confused at first. Then his expression changed. Hurt flickered across his eyes. Not anger, but something softer. "That's not what I meant," he said. He raised both hands slowly, palms open, showing she had nothing to fear. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "You're shivering. You haven't eaten. You're limping. You've got scratches on your arms. I need to make sure you're not hurt." She stared at him, unsure if she should believe. "I don't touch a woman who doesn't say yes," he added, voice steady and respectful. "Not even my wife." He picked up a folded wool blanket and draped it carefully around her shoulders. "Sit," he said softly. "Please." Eliza sat. For the first time in her life, someone wasn't telling her she was a burden. For the first time, she didn't feel like something broken being left behind. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the quiet. What kind of morning begins with fear and ends with something close to safety? Eliza didn't know yet. She only knew the cabin was quiet in a way she had never known quiet to be. She woke wrapped in thick wool blankets she didn't remember climbing under. The fire burned low. Her damp wedding dress, folded neatly over a chair, was finally starting to dry. Beside it, laid carefully, were clean clothes, a soft flannel shirt and a wool skirt. A small note rested on top. "Breakfast is on the stove. I'll be back before midday. Don't go out without boots." Eliza sat up slowly, the quilt slipping from her shoulders. Her body trembled, not from cold but from the weight of everything that had led her here. The church. The sleet. The stranger who claimed her. The stranger who didn't hurt her. She touched her wrist where her father's fingers had been, then her cheek where Enoch's blanket had rested. For the first time in months, her skin didn't sting. She dressed in the clothes he left. The shirt was loose, the skirt soft, and for once she didn't feel judged by the fabric against her body. She stepped into the kitchen and poured black coffee into a tin cup. It smelled rich and bitter. She ate stew from the pot until her stomach stopped growling. She didn't hear him enter. "You're awake." She froze, cup tightening in her hand, then turned slowly. Dr. Enoch Blackthornne stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders, a bundle of firewood under his arm. He looked like he lived outside time, carved from winter and silence. But his eyes eased a little when he saw her standing on her own 2 feet. "I found the food," she said, her voice small and cracked. "I hoped you would." He set the logs beside the hearth and took off his hat. He didn't step closer. He didn't hover. He kept the distance she needed. Eliza swallowed hard. "Why?" she asked. He paused, then knelt by the fire to add kindling before answering. "When I was younger," he said, "I tried to save everyone with my hands, stitching them up, pulling them back from fever, fixing whatever broke." He looked at her now, eyes steady. "But sometimes saving someone means giving them a place to breathe." Eliza's throat tightened. "You don't even know me." "I know what fear looks like when it's been living in a person a long time," he said quietly. "And I know men like your father, men like Willard." She winced. He noticed but didn't push. Instead, he added softly, "I will touch you everywhere." The bowl slipped from her hands and clattered into the sink. She stumbled back, breath shattering. "No," she whispered. "Please, I'll work. I'll do anything. Just don't use me." Enoch stood still as stone, both hands lifted, palms open again. "That's not what I meant," he said calmly. "Eliza, look at me." She did, trembling. "You're hurt," he said. "Your ankle's swollen. Your palms are scraped. You're limping. I need to check you, not touch you for anything else." Her breath shook. "I don't touch women without permission," he said again. "Not even my wife." The word wife sat strange between them, heavy, real, but not possessive, not a chain, just a fact he carried with quiet resolve. Eliza's shoulders loosened. Just a little. Enough to breathe. Enoch took a wooden box from a shelf and set it on the table. Inside were bandages, dried herbs, a small bottle of alcohol. He knelt a few feet in front of her. "If you want," he said, "I'll look at your foot." Her voice barely rose above a breath. "All right." He worked quietly, gently, his hands warm but never wandering. He unwrapped her boot, saw the swollen ankle, and nodded once. "You twisted it badly," he said. "I'll wrap it." His fingers moved with the steady care of a man who once saved lives with these same hands. He didn't look higher than her calf, didn't crowd her, didn't rush. When he finished, he cleaned the scrapes on her palms with warm water. Her eyes burned, not from pain, but from the strange feeling of being treated like someone worth tending. "You are a doctor," she whispered. He hesitated. "I was." "What happened?" The fire cracked loud. Snow pressed against the window. Enoch's jaw tightened. "My wife," he said quietly, "and my boy. Fever took them both. I couldn't save them." A silence hung heavy. "I buried them under the bent pine," he added. "After that, there wasn't much left of me to give anyone." Her heart tightened for him, for the man who lost everything and still saved her. "You saved me," she said softly. He looked up, eyes tired and honest. "Maybe that's why you're here." That night, they sat in silence. Enoch carved something small from wood. Eliza watched the flames dance. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was steady. Safe. The next morning came cold and bright. Eliza limped outside for fresh air, boots crunching in the snow. She didn't plan to walk far. But she stopped suddenly at the sight of a wooden cross tucked beneath a crooked pine. Someone had brushed the snow away. A scrap of cloth tied at the base fluttered in the wind. She stepped closer. "You buried someone here?" she whispered. Enoch's voice came from behind her. "My son and my wife." Eliza didn't speak. Grief hung between them like fog. But it wasn't frightening, it was honest. "You never left," she said. "No," he replied. "Some places aren't prisons, Eliza. Some are scars. You stay because you don't know where else the pain fits." She understood that more than she wanted to admit. They walked back to the cabin, their steps leaving 2 sets of prints in the snow, the start of something she didn't dare name. Inside, Enoch went back to carving. Eliza watched quietly. After a moment she asked, "You ever finish any of them?" Quote. He shrugged. "Sometimes." She smiled softly. "Finish this one. For me." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded and began carving again. Just before dusk, a voice called from the woods. "You really did bring home a wife." Eliza turned, startled. A girl stepped out from between the pines, barefoot, wrapped in a deerskin shawl, long braids, sharp eyes. Mari Wild Elk. Enoch introduced him, but Mari's gaze stayed locked on Eliza. "You don't look like a ghost," Mari said, "but you walk like someone who doesn't expect to keep waking up." Eliza's breath caught. Mari handed her a bundle of herbs. "For your foot," she said. "Pain doesn't have to rule you." Eliza didn't know how to respond. Mari smirked. "Don't look so scared. We all break somewhere." Eliza held the herbs tight in her hands. Maybe breaking wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. What happens when a woman who's been silenced all her life finally learns what her own voice sounds like? That was the question Eliza Blackthornne carried with her through every sunrise that broke over those mountains. Weeks passed, and the snow began to thaw. The cabin that once felt like a hiding place slowly turned into something more, a home. Eliza could walk again, her limp almost gone. The herbs Mari brought had helped, and so had the quiet. But peace never lasted long in a world that loved to take it away. That morning, Enoch came back from town with a letter folded in his coat pocket. He looked older when he stepped inside, the kind of tired that lived in the bones. Eliza noticed right away. "You got news," she said. He set the letter on the table without looking at her. "They want me back, at the clinic." Eliza blinked. "The one down in Laurel Hollow?" He nodded once. "They lost their only doctor last month. Someone remembered I used to be one." She stared at him. "And what did you tell them?" Quote, "That I'm not going." "Why not?" His jaw tightened. "Because some ghosts belong buried." Eliza's voice softened. You mean your wife and son? He didn't answer. He just stared at the flames. I failed them, he whispered finally. I failed at the one thing I was supposed to be good at, healing. She stepped closer. Maybe you didn't fail, she said. Maybe you just loved people too deeply to accept that death comes anyway. He turned to her, pain flashing behind his eyes. You think healing is my gift, Eliza, but it's my curse. She didn't back down. You think healing is your curse? She said, steady and clear, but maybe it's your calling. The room went still. Only the fire moved, crackling softly between them. Enoch looked away first. I can't go back there. Then don't, she said, but don't lie to yourself about what you were born to do. Before he could answer, the sound of boots crunched outside, not Enoch's, not Marie's. He reached for the rifle near the wall, his body tensing. Then came the knock. When the door opened, a man stepped in, older, weathered, a shotgun resting easy on his shoulder. It was Luther James, one of Enoch's oldest friends, or what was left of that friendship. Didn't expect to find you home, Luther said, eyes shifting from Enoch to Eliza. Or with company. Eliza stiffened but didn't speak. Luther eased into a chair, ran into two men down in Laurel Hollow asking questions. One had a badge that didn't belong to him. The other had a scar from ear to chin. Said they were looking for a missing wife, Eliza Holloway. The name hit like a slap. Eliza's heart stumbled. I take it you're not missing, Luther said quietly. No, she said, but they'll say I am. Luther sighed. Then they're coming. Maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight. Men like that travel fast when money's involved. Quote. Enoch's face hardened. Then they'll have to come through me. Luther studied him a moment. You ready for that, Doc? You've been hiding from the world a long time. You still remember how to stand in front of it? Quote. Enoch opened a small box from the cupboard and pulled out an old revolver wrapped in cloth. He placed it on the table with a dull thud. I remember, he said. Luther nodded once, then looked at Eliza. Be sure you know who you really are before they get here. When he left, the cabin went quiet again. Only the ticking of the clock and Eliza's heartbeat filled the space. That night, Enoch cleaned the revolver. Eliza mended his coat beside him. Neither said a word, but the silence between them wasn't fear. It was readiness. The storm came before dawn. The sound of horses in the clearing snapped Enoch awake. Eliza was already sitting up, clutching the rifle. Stay behind me, he whispered. Two figures stepped from the fog. One wore a star. The other wore that long scar like a second mouth. Dr. Blackthornne, the man with the badge called out. We're here on lawful grounds. Got a warrant for the return of one Eliza May Holloway. Says she was taken against her will. Eliza stepped into view. I'm Eliza Blackthornne now. The man smirked. Paper says different. She's not property, Enoch said firmly. The marshal shrugged. Don't want trouble, Doc. Just the girl. You'll leave empty-handed. The scarred man's hand twitched near his pistol, but before he could draw, a deep voice echoed from the trees. She didn't run. She escaped. Luther James emerged from the woods, rifle steady in his grip. I saw the bruises, he said, the fear in her eyes. That man she left ain't a husband. He's a monster. The marshal's face tightened, his certainty cracking. He looked between them. The doctor, the woman, the old friend, and then lowered his gun slightly. This ain't over, he warned. Men like Willard Holloway don't forget. Eliza met his stare. Then let him remember the day I stopped being afraid. The marshal hesitated, then turned away. His partner followed. Their horses disappeared down the mountain trail. Inside, Eliza sank into a chair. Her hands were trembling, but her voice wasn't. They'll come again, she said. I know, Enoch replied, and we'll be ready. Days later, Luther rode out to gather witnesses from the valley, people who knew what Willard had done. When he returned, he brought names. Real names. Real voices. They're willing to testify, he said. Women who've been hurt the same way. Eliza stared at the list. Why would they risk it? Quote, They're not doing it for you, Luther said. They're doing it for every woman who never made it out." Eliza's throat tightened. "Then I'll do it. I'll speak." The hearing was held in the same town that had once laughed at her. The same church bell rang that day, but this time it wasn't for a wedding. It was for reckoning. She stood before the court, her hands steady. "My name is Eliza May Blackthornne," she said, "and I am not his wife." She told them everything. The bruises, the fear, the silence, the pain. When she finished, no one spoke. Then, one by one, the witnesses stepped forward, each telling their truth, each breaking the silence a little more. When it was over, Willard Holloway's face wasn't proud anymore. It was hollow, because his power had lived in their fear, and she had taken it back. Outside the courthouse, Enoch waited for her on the steps. "You all right?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, voice trembling, "but I feel awake." He smiled faintly. "Then you're already winning." Months passed. The clinic reopened. Word spread across the mountains. Drive Enoch Blackthornne was healing again, and his wife helped women who had nowhere else to go. They called it the Blackthorne House, healing, shelter, truth. One evening, Eliza sat on the porch writing letters to women she'd never met. Women who needed to hear that survival wasn't shame, that freedom was possible. "If you're scared," she wrote, "come sit with me, I'll believe you." She folded the letter and slipped it into the box marked for the next. Behind her, Enoch leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with quiet pride. "You never stop working," he said. "Neither do you." He smiled and stepped closer. "You know," he said softly, "when I told you that first night I'd touch every part of you, I meant it." She turned, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I know," she whispered. "And you did. Every part that hurt. Every part that didn't know how to trust." He reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "No one will ever make you feel small again." She looked up at him, eyes shining in the lantern light. "Not while I'm standing beside you." The mountain wind carried the sound of the creek below, soft and steady, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Eliza Blackthornne wasn't running anymore. She was living, and every woman who crossed that mountain after her would know. The world couldn't break what had learned how to heal itself.